right, the video store is back open, $2 late fee, and joining me as my co-host this month on March-ial Arts Madness is my good buddy, my friend, David Ullman, documentarian, movie aficionado, musician, etc., etc. David, I'm so happy to have you on the show as my co-host.
Yeah, it is an honor, sir. Good to see you, and it's such a delight to be here.
Yeah, dude, I cannot wait to jump into today's episode with our guest, Oliver Harper, who is an editor, a director, documentarian, man of many hats. And as I say for myself, I'm the Zak of all trades, master of none. I would say you are probably the opposite, Oliver, judging by your resume of work. So, Oliver, thanks for being on our show.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. It's very nice to meet you, Zak and David.
So, a little quick backstory for everybody. I was in the pre-planning stages of doing March-ial Arts Madness for $2 late fee, and was trying to come up with an episode topic. And then in my algorithm on social media, up pops a post from Oliver, and it's a photograph of the cast from No Retreat, No Surrender, many of the cast, in Germany for a screening. And I'm like, wait, what is this? And there's a new documentary coming out, a Kickstarter for it. And I'm like, wait, what is that? And so my gears started shifting, and I'm like, maybe I could get Kurt McKinney back on our show to do an interview. And maybe he can get JW Fails on the show as well. The worlds came together, stars aligned, bingo bango. That episode dropped already. And then I thought, well, I want to do an episode celebrating more No Retreat, No Surrender. I want to get my buddy David on, and I want to get the man who's responsible for making the documentary about No Retreat, No Surrender, Oliver, on. Oliver, can you tell us, like, how did that all come to be with the No Retreat, No Surrender doc?
Well, Sean David Lowe, who had produced The Last Kumite, because I'd edited that film, obviously, and he knew I'd also done documentaries in the past. You know, he had followed my YouTube channel for a long time, and I just finished up Here Comes a New Challenger, and he was toying with the idea of doing some documentaries, and he had a handful of ideas, and number one was No Retreat, No Surrender, because in Germany it's known as Karate Tiger,
right?
And it was massive over there apparently, and I've only just kind of really realized until recently that it was so big, because I went to the recent screening of it, the reunion with the cast, and just the amount of people there wanting autographs was insane. I couldn't believe it. So I had obviously seen No Retreat, No Surrender as a kid, because in the UK it was, because I was a huge fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme, and I'd seen perhaps like Kickboxer, thought it was amazing in like early 90s, and I started buying his movies on VHS. Obviously, some movies I had to sort of, beg my mum or dad to buy for me because they were 18 rated. But most were like going for like £5, and I saw this No Retreat, No Surrender. By that point, they'd changed the cover, because in America and in the early VHS release, they have Kurt McKinney and Jean-Claude just like facing off.
Right.
And the UK tape at this point had just had Van Damme on it. So I thought, oh, it's a Van Damme film. Right, I bought that. And I was like, he's barely in it. So he's only at the beginning and near the end. And but I enjoyed the film for what it was. And had great pop songs in it. Kind of, people try and compare it to The Karate Kid, because it came out roughly the same time.
Right.
Internationally anyway, because 86 for America.
Yeah, that's why we're celebrating the 40th. The international was 85. US was 86.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So, but No Retreat had better music than Karate Kid, even though Karate Kid is a bigger movie, more popular. I think the songs are kind of more catchy. No Retreat, with the two different scores for it, for the international and American cut. And but it didn't really stick with me until Sean had brought it up and it mentioned he wanted to do this. And Sean had done a lot of the legwork. Sean had written a kind of a book on the film. It was in the works of doing that. So he sent me his kind of PDF, just kind of what he had written. It's all translated from German to English. So there was a bit of like dodgy translation, like because it's automatic translation, whatever. But he'd done all the hard work. He'd done all the, finding all the people, getting them to agree to take part in the documentary if something was going to happen.
Wow.
All I had to do was get Scott Adkins to jump on board, and Scott Adkins, knew who I was, and he'd seen In Search of, also he was in Search of Last Action Heroes, which he really enjoyed, which was great because I didn't know what I think he kind of said to me, it was, a passing email, how much he liked it, and seeing him in person and telling me, I was like, oh, that's wonderful. So I signed up for it. So basically, I was in this situation, I got a gun for hire.
Yeah.
And I brought on my friend Christopher Stratton, who'd photographed a lot of the interviews for my Street Fighter 2 documentary and done motion graphics and co-editing. So the crazy intro for my Street Fighter 2 documentary, he done all that animation. So Chris is like it's like a Swiss Army knife. He can do a lot of things, and he makes my stuff look good, So Chris had, obviously signed on, and we had all agreed to sort of what certain roles we'd do, and we sort of kind of started filming like last year, and got half the interviews kind of in the bag before we even announced anything, because it was just like, let's get stuff together so we can show people and not have a Kickstarter. Most Kickstarters are generally done with a concept. We've got an idea. What do you think of it? People are like, we love it. Let's back it. Let's get things going. But for me, it was kind of like, I always like to kind of show people we have something to show them. This is what it could look like, or this is kind of what we've made. We need, additional funding to finish it. And that's kind of, where we're at with it, really. I mean, we've got more interviews done, obviously, with the reunion. So we're kind of, just need to sort of finish to get the post-production done,
Well, I mean, typically when someone pitches an idea, right, you have the bare bones, but you went in with a lot of collateral already to kind of show, which is fantastic.
The Street Fighter, we had there's actually like me having a concept, an idea, then we'd shot just a teaser with me and just kind of walking this arcade, and we shot it on like black magic cameras at 6K resolution, which was ridiculous, but it all looked amazing. My friend was just shouting, "This looks like Netflix." I was like, yeah, it does look good. So that was kind of
You're on the right show, because David, would you agree that Oliver's on the right spot? We covering like anything 80s related, action, martial arts, video games, etc.
Oh yeah. And I'm just looking at the list of the people you spoke to already that we see glimpses of in the trailer, and it's like everybody from Kurt McKinney to the breakdancers, and both composers. I found out about it through, I think, Instagram, and my eyes must have popped out of my head and instantly, supported, and I'm so excited about this thing just to have it exist. Thank you.
It was crazy. It was crazy because we had to shoot like. Chris went out last year and shot like 6 interviews in a week in LA, and where we were there, like the dancers came out of nowhere and said, "Oh, we heard about this project. We want to talk about it." And
wild.
Chris, Chris is, I've given him a co-director credit because he's done quite a lot of work. And I was like, yeah. So he was like, "Oh, I don't know about this. Do we really need the dancers?" And David, the producer, Sean David's like, "We've got to have this now." I was like, "Okay, right." We had to get another cameraman to shoot that because Chris had finished. And so other people just coming forward saying, "Oh, we want to talk about the movie." And so it's been really kind of exciting to see, people are still talking about it after all these years, and are willing to take part. Right.
I mean, that's the thing, and I encourage everybody to go back into our archives and listen to the episode Dustin and I did, where we covered extensively No Retreat, No Surrender. This is more of a celebration and a reflection upon just the significance that this movie has had over the decades, because it reminds me, and there is a connection to this movie as well. It reminds me of the movie Megaforce. Megaforce was a movie that everyone laughed at, thought it was a joke, and has become like a pop culture phenomenon over the past 40 some odd years. No Retreat, No Surrender is the same way. I mean, there are certain scenes that get nitpicked from No Retreat, No Surrender, I guess is a nice way to put it, or get memed or giftified or whatever. And those are the scenes people remember, and they think, "Oh, is that what this movie is?" But there's so much more to it. There's so much more than the ice cream on the crotch scene and the Van Damme ripping his shirt off scene. It's like there's so much more to that. By the way, side note, I talked to JW and Kurt about said scene, And I know you guys explore that in the documentary
Of course.
as well. You have to. And I said it's like we have to talk about this. I also want to let everybody know too that, the interview I did with JW and Kurt is extensive, but it's more about a reflection on what was going on in the 80s with them versus what's going to be in the documentary itself. Because I didn't want to ruin anything that you guys are going to put out in this doc. It's like your documentary, the In Search of the Last Action Heroes, is so extensive, and it's such a celebration of what we love. And I haven't seen the Street Fighter documentary yet, Street Fighter 2, The New Challenger, but I did order it from Vinegar Syndrome, and I encourage everybody, it's pre-ordered at this moment on Vinegar. You can go to their links are in the show notes. You can go order it there. By the way, Vinegar Syndrome, such a weird name, but that's a whole other side note. But the idea, like you really appreciate, like David and I do, appreciate the cinema that we grew up with as kids, right? And these are not movies that Siskel and Ebert are sitting at and discussing and breaking down and going, oh, I want to watch that movie because it's a Siskel and Ebert pick. These are the movies that you watch on repeat. Siskel and Ebert movies, much like many of the Oscar movies, they're the movie you watch one time and that's it, right? The Pianist, fantastic movie, but I'm not watching that on repeat, like et cetera, et cetera. No Retreat, No Surrender is a perfect example to me, is that movie that I watched nonstop, wore out the VHS, had to buy another one because I wore it out so much. David, when did you first get exposed to No Retreat, No Surrender?
Oh, I've been thinking about that a lot and trying to see if I can unearth that memory, and I can't remember specifically. Like, did I see it before Bloodsport? Because I'm 45 now, and I saw some of those movies at kind of a younger age than I should have.
Of course.
But this one's PG, right? So
Right.
part of me wonders, like, did I see it first, and was it what it got me excited? But I'm not super sure. It's just kind of eternal in my memory, like it
Yeah.
was always there. And yeah, it's something that has stayed with me through the years. And I realized recently that I kind of am like a 45-year-old Jason Stillwell. Some of it has to do with No Retreat, No Surrender.
You're going to have to explain. You're going to have to go deeper for us.
Well,
Were you bullied, David, as a kid?
no, I was very fortunate to not be bullied.
That's good.
And I was yeah. So but I was, and these movies got me into martial arts, but really just movie martial arts. I never
Right.
formally studied. I took like 3 months in college, which by the logic of these movies would make me a master, I think, that period of time. But I didn't actually. I got like one stripe on my white belt, but
Hey, that's
I was mostly like making VHS movies, and I have a long history with that. But that's sort of beside the point. Other than I love the movie martial arts part of it, and Jean-Claude Van Damme in particular, and so I didn't think as much about the Jason Stillwell character when I was a kid, but in my late 30s, right around the time that No Retreat, No Surrender Blu-ray came out from Kino, there's an interview on there where, yes,
Yeah.
I've got it by me here too. Or no, yeah, I do. But there's an interview with Kurt McKinney on there where he talks about being in his 50s and still going out to the garage and doing his kicks and his stretches. And I was doing a podcast with a friend of mine that I grew up with, kind of reconnecting and with being a fan of things. I was a musician for a while, and I got really like out of shape and didn't take care of myself, and was just at this transitional point in my life. And hearing Kurt McKinney talk about that, and on the podcast, somebody brought up like a new friend. I made a new friend on that podcast, and he's like, "Did we just become best friends? Should we do karate in the garage?" Which I now know to be stepbrothers. I didn't realize that at the time.
Is that an homage though? Is that an homage to No Retreat, No Surrenders and Step Brothers?
Well, that's where I was trying to get to, I guess, in the most long-winded way possible, is that ultimately I remembered being a kid and like pictures in those same Art of Fighting books that Jason has. I'm holding him up for the podcast,
very nice.
Wow.
Yeah, it's funny because this one has in my childhood writing 3 names underneath it. It says Jean-Claude Van Damme, Bruce Lee, and Frank W. Dukes.
Wow.
Oh no, Frank W. Dukes.
Yeah.
Oh
Little did
dear.
I know. But in any event, I
The
there's a
movie version. The
picture.
movie version.
Yes, the movie version. There's a picture of Bruce Lee, many pictures of Bruce Lee in those books, and he's punching a piece of paper. So
Mm.
I had no equipment. I'm 30, what, 7 or something, and way out of shape. And I'm interview with Kurt McKinney, and I was like, you know what? I could do karate in the garage. And so I went out, hung a piece of paper, and that started in like 8 years now into doing it. I'll do it later today. Do it like 3 times a week to the
Wow.
music from these old movies. Sometimes I laugh out loud at the absurdity of that, but I have a great time and really like helped me. It was part of, and actually, without going on too long, the other big part of a lot of the emotional component of the getting my shit together was Bruce Lee's philosophies.
Yeah.
So that's why I joke, but it's also kind of serious. It's like the movie itself. It's incredibly earnest while being kind of silly. So anyway, it means a lot to me. It's a it's a mainstay in my life to this day.
But you applied it to your life. It's not
It
just
seems
like the
so.
right. We all watch movies. We love movies, and we watch them, and we go, man, I would really love to do that. Or you idealize a
Hmm.
character or something or in a moment. Most people don't act on that. You acted on that. And look at you. It's like me as a 8-year-old, 9-year-old doing voices in my bedroom as a kid with my toys, and now I'm a voice actor. It's like you
Yeah.
projected into the future and you saw what was going to happen down the road. That's wonderful. That's the way it should be. Oliver, did you do karate in the garage?
I'd reenact stuff from movies, you know what I mean? Just kind of look at that and just copy it all the time, like Bruce Lee stuff or Ninja Turtles. You just act
Yeah.
things out as a kid, just go to the world of imagination. And if someone saw you doing it, you'd look a right tit, you know. But I didn't study karate. I did study taekwondo
Okay.
Nice.
for a period of time, and but I kind of stopped because it was kind of like, oh, you can join. It costs this amount of money. Oh, I can
Right.
afford that. And suddenly, when you want to go to the next bit, it's like the price just goes and it goes straight up. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
I'll save my money to spend it on video games and and so forth. So
You can't shoot
no, I didn't.
fireballs in karate.
I need to do a hurricane kick quick. So I did one time. We all had to go up in a line. And it was a mix of girls and guys, and we had to jump in the air and do a kick and kick this pad. And when I was in the line, my stomach was gurgling. I was like, "Oh
Oh
God!"
no. Oh
I
no.
went in the air, kicked it, and did a massive fart, and everyone just like,
Oh.
no one said anything, and I was just like, "Okay, that was weird," and everyone was just like smirking. I was like, "Okay, that was a bit embarrassing." Red faced.
When you're a kid, when you're really little and you fart and it's like no one cares, they're just like, huh? What? I used to be a teacher, Oliver. I taught 5-year-olds. I was a kindergarten teacher, and I would have kindergartners who fart and they literally act the same way a dog does when they fart. We're like, who did that? What was that? Like that came out of me? Right. But then it suddenly puberty kicks in, you're self-conscious and you fart and you're like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. And then as you get older, like eventually you kind of let it go. I think you get a little bit older than us, I think. Oliver, you're probably the baby in the three of us. But yeah, I mean, I had a little bit longer experience with karate. I definitely was influenced by, Jeff Speakman and The Perfect Weapon and No
Mm.
Retreat, No Surrender was a big one for me too. And I was taking Kempo karate because I saw Jeff Speakman in The Perfect Weapon. And of course, Bloodsport, was huge. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was addicted to it for a minute. But I think that was the catalyst that changed me, that got me from stopping to go, that got me to like end my karate career was when the prices shot up. And I'm like, my mom's like,
Mm.
we can't afford this. This is too expensive. But I had mentioned to Kurt that there's this angst that Jason has in No Retreat, No Surrender that I felt was like recreated later on in cinema, and it was in Boogie Nights when
Yes.
when when, his character, Mark Wahlberg's character, Dirk Diggler, Eddie Adams or whatever, is arguing with his mom, and she's like, with your karate and your posters on the walls, blah, blah, blah. And there's like, that's that moment in that movie. It's the only moment in that movie that I connected with No Retreat, No Surrender. I let Kurt know that, and he didn't seem to really make the connection, because probably was thinking about something else. But I'm like, wait a minute. I think Paul Thomas Anderson was influenced a little bit by No Retreat, No Surrender.
It could have been, Zach. Could have been. Yeah. I have to rewatch that film, and if it's like, it's clearly like something's there, I might just throw it in.
Why
There's
not?
something to it. Like my memory is like even the lighting of that, like it's kind of similar to the confrontation he has with his dad, where he's like, "Just leave me alone," and he runs away. All that.
Yeah, totally. That's what I'm talking about. By the way, I'm sure you'll explore this in the doc, but being the two different cuts of the film, and then the international cut, which is far superior. It has more information, more like depth to it. But there are some moments where I miss this time of cinema where they would shoot a scene out of sequence, So like Jason's dad, for example, had a beard, and and he suddenly doesn't have a beard, and you're like, wait,
Yeah.
that's in the same scene, and that's pretty remarkable. Oliver, how did you get involved with making documentaries?
Well, obviously, I had been doing YouTube I've been doing it for over a decade now, and I got involved with a gentleman called Robin Block, who had come from sort of TV side of things, and he had kind of left the industry or was kind of looking for work, and he had a bit of money saved, and he was looking to sort of venture out into something different. And he'd been watching my channel. He was in love with what I did, and we had a conversation. We met up in London. And he was like, "Would you want to do a documentary? Like, what would you cover it on? What would you do?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, the thing that appeared to be the most popular on my channel was action movies." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Well, why don't just be on the action genre and celebrate that?" And the idea from the beginning was kind of like, we could be something just about the 1980s, because 1980s was, and it still is, a popular decade. People love the music and movies. People talk about it, even though it's kind of, I think the last 5-6 years, it's kind of shifting more towards the 90s now as things just naturally progress.
Yeah.
And people get nostalgic for that decade. But so I wanted it to be about the 80s and 90s, seeing this kind of rise in action and this kind of, downwards trend as we saw it kind of go from big budget action movies to kind of the lower end straight to DVD, right?
Right.
So with his kind of background and knowledge, it was kind of easier to sort of me to sort of get my foot in the door, or essentially get my arse in gear to sort of go from being a YouTuber to essentially directing a documentary. Technically, at that point, directing a documentary was really, you're just a glorified editor. You're basically... because we had to shoot a lot of stuff in LA, and the co-writer Timon Singh had written a book called Born to Be Bad, about celebrating all the villains of cinema. So we already had this kind of had contacts, and he made spoken to people, had created this kind of friendship. So again, it was kind of easier for that transition to go from like, hey, we've got this idea, we've already got these people who are accessible. Let's go from there and, see how things turn out. And so essentially for me, it was getting all this kind of these interview footage and just basically making sure structurally it kind of worked. And there's a story there, and featuring movies that I loved and I think what people would want to know about. Obviously, when you're covering the genre that is that big, you can't cover everything.
No.
Obviously, there's the B movies as well. And there's Hong Kong cinema, which we cover a little bit, but you can't, there's so much of it. You couldn't do it in a theatrical runtime, so there's always things you've got to cut your darlings, as they say. So I kind of made sure that I covered my bases with what people loved, and I knew what people loved down to the fact that I knew what was popular on YouTube and movie reviews of the action genre.
Of course, and you're always going to have that one guy who you forgot to put that movie in. Ding.
Someone sent me a massive list of movies I didn't mention.
Of course.
One was, I didn't mention action stars such as Anthony Hopkins. I was like, he's not an action star. Buckaroo Banzai. I'm like, that's not an action film.
Yeah.
That's not, you wouldn't put that next to Rambo or Commando. It's like,
No.
wait, it was a bonkers list. I would have loved to include some Superman in there, but it's more fantasy that is than
I
action.
agree. I agree. David, is there, when it comes to the martial art genre, I think I think both of us are on the same page when we're, omitting Hong Kong cinema, omitting, talking specifically about American action movies, American martial art movies. Do you lump in those PM movie entertainment, those titles, with Jeff, what is it, David Bradley or,
Down the Dragon.
Don the
Yeah.
Dragon Wilson,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera?
Oh, that's a good question. I've found over the years, like because of the internet and finding like-minded people who are into this stuff back in the day, that I thought of myself as this kind of aficionado. There's a VHS behind me somewhere called The Deadliest Art, which I remember has Bruce Lee on the cover, and it is kind of an overview of martial arts movies up until that time.
Okay.
And I think it must have come out in like 1992 or 3.
Cool.
I remember it best because I treasure it still because it had the theatrical preview for Rapid Fire at the beginning of it.
Nice.
So, but as I watched that and I realized that, I was very aware of your Cynthia Rothrock's and all of that, but I didn't actually watch a lot of those movies. I just watched like the people I liked the most. Like my top was Jean-Claude Van Damme, which was kind of funny because American action films and he's this European, but
French Canadian. He always plays a character who's French Canadian.
Right.
On the bayou or something,
That's right. Yes. I love that's why Kickboxer for me might be the quintessential Van Damme movie because he literally just says like, I was born in Belgium, but now I live in Los Angeles. I was like, whoa. They never
Speaks
get
the
that
truth.
specific.
I think they got it right. I think they were trying to figure that out, and they're like, well, yeah, we should probably start giving him like Frank Dukes. Frank Dukes does not sound like that, You gonna call the cops or whatever. Oliver, you had mentioned Jean-Claude Van Damme being on the cover of No Retreat, No Surrender solo, right? And he was such a pull. I think of a movie like Black Eagle, for example, with Sho Kosugi, who, let's be honest, Sho Kosugi was, a bigger star than Van Damme. Definitely at that point. I wouldn't say overall because audiences change, but I think pure martial art fans would say he's probably a more legitimate martial artist. Putting Jean-Claude on the cover of something obviously sells the movie. Putting Kurt McKinney on the cover of something doesn't sell the movie. Ralph Macchio had already established himself as an actor when he did Karate Kid.
Yeah.
I cannot say
I love
karate.
you say it that way.
I just have to. I feel the karate vibe. Sorry, I just got to go there. But because Boogie Nights is one of my all-time favorite movies, but that's a whole other story. Putting Kurt on the cover doesn't sell the movie, and I was thinking of movies that had come out at that time. It came out in May here in the United States, and it was, paired with other movies that definitely had a larger star quality to it, movies like with Judd Nelson. We're talking 1986, so you think about who's popular at that time. Judd Nelson and Richard Pryor and JoJo Dancer, Your Life is Calling came out the same Friday as No Retreat, No Surrender. And
I think Cobra was at the same time as well.
I believe it did. It might have come out the week before. Dangerously Close was which by the way, if you're talking about B movies, that's a great B movie. I wouldn't say it's an action movie. It's more of a thriller, but Albert Pune directed that.
Yeah, that's yeah.
And Saving Grace, which is not the movie with Sean Penn. It's with Tom Conti. And if today's audiences don't know who Tom Conti is, you're not missing out on much, but I'm just going to say it's worth checking out. And Fire with Fire, by the way, with Virginia Madsen and Craig Sheffer.
Oh.
And so these movies all came out right before Top Gun. So of course, No Retreat, No Surrender is going to get buried. And Karate Kid, what it did for Ralph Macchio, No Retreat, No Surrender didn't do for Kurt McKinney. But Kurt, like you said, in his 50s, David, he's like still doing karate, still great. He's now I believe he's like 63 now at this point. He just had a birthday not that long ago. And he's embraced fully No Retreat, No Surrender. Like he's not he doesn't have a problem with the ice cream scene, or he doesn't have a problem with, the what is it, the bunny rabbit that his girlfriend has in the movie.
Oh yeah, yeah, Kathy. Yeah, Salerno has. Yeah.
But Oliver, as far as interviews are concerned for No Retreat, No Surrender doc, you said documentarians are like a glorified editor. Are there people that you are expecting to line up or hoping to line up that you haven't gotten yet?
Well, as I referring to, a director, a documentarian director being a glorified editor, that was the case with the action documentary. But with, as I've progressed with just, other stuff I've made, we shoot a lot of B-roll, which
Yeah.
I get to direct. So I'm like, yay, directing. So people, yeah, I mean, there is a few additional cast members who have like smaller supporting roles that Sean David couldn't get hold of.
Okay.
Well, now someone's kind of seen the promos and I've come out the woodwork. I'm like, oh, okay, we could film them. I know people were frustrated that Jean-Claude is not featured at this point because we had reached out. Of course, I'd reached out to him on the previous documentaries I've made, and it's always like, this sounds interesting. Then suddenly it's like he's not interested.
Right.
So in the case of this, there was kind of positive conversations, and suddenly it was like, no, he politely declined. Because I think the trend now, I think for him, it's because Arnold did a great documentary for Netflix, 4-part episode,
right.
Which was brilliant. I really enjoyed that. Stallone did one, which he produced, and it was like a lot shorter and it wasn't as good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Dolph Lundgren has one in the works,
Yep.
which I'm looking forward to seeing because he just got over cancer, which is brilliant. You can't have Dolph be defeated by cancer. That's just like, no, can't have that happen.
I tell you what, he walked by me here. I live in Santa Monica, and I was at the local sandwich shop one day. This was about a couple months ago after he beat cancer. And he literally walked by me in the shop, and he's towering over me. And I come outside, I'm like, to my wife, I'm like, holy shit, that's Dolph Lundgren. Dolph Lundgren just walked past me. She's like,
He-Man!
Yeah. I go, it's He-Man. It's He. She's like, what, the He-Man? I go, no, never mind. It's okay. But still, he was huge and he looked great. So I'm glad he's doing good. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to derail.
It was fine. And I think Jean-Claude's going to be following in a similar path.
Well,
So
did you either of you see that reality series he did for Showtime?
Oh yeah, I die by it.
It's amazingly bad.
It's magnificent.
Is that when it's like this? It's like the Osbournes, but with like Van Damme.
Yes,
They kind of
yes.
like reality show. Right? I saw snippets of that. They had it on the UK on ITV or Channel 3.
Okay.
And I saw him. It's just a clip where he's signing posters for the fans.
Yes.
They're sending them all this. It's ginormous, like double impact poster. I was like, that looks amazing. It's ginormous. And I didn't see much of that, and I missed I think the Amazon show he did that was produced by Ridley Scott of all things.
Yeah. Wow.
He plays a secret agent. I saw the first episode. I thought this is all right, quite funny.
Yeah.
But I didn't see the rest of it. But
It's not the worst thing in the world. It's okay.
No, I mean, the stuff with him, like he's pretty vulnerable in it, like surprisingly so.
Oh yeah.
Like,
yeah, I agree.
there's a clip where he's like talking, and he's got such a great story. I hope this documentary eventually happens that
Right.
like profiles him. But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in that behind closed doors series that beyond just what gets on, the sort of exploitive stuff where he's freaking out about not being in the Bloodsport remake or whatever. But
Right. I mean, look, I had they did a signing and a screening just a signing of Lionheart here in Los Angeles when the Blu-ray came out.
Nice.
And the majority of the cast was there. Obviously, Jean-Claude was not. And they did a Q&A and an interview. And Michelle Kesey, right? And
Yeah.
he was there. And he came to the States with Van Damme, and he told this amazing story. He's like, this is going to be in my book. And I'm like, well, where's the book? This was almost 10 years ago now. And he starts telling the story about the two of them coming to the States. And it's a wild story from people thinking Jean-Claude had a bomb in his bag on the airplane and practically getting thrown out to, eating, cans of food, stealing a chicken from the local grocery store here in Santa Monica and sitting on the beach eating the chicken and like eating food out of cans until they finally got hired and slash able to live in this gym where they could clean up the gym and they could stay there for as long as they wanted. It's amazing and inspiring,
Yeah.
right? And hopefully that gets made. These stories need to be told. I think that's the evolution of cinema now. We love all these movies from the 80s and the 90s. They don't look the same anymore. You said Oliver, you said Ridley Scott produced that Jean-Claude series. Like his movies don't look the same anymore. It doesn't have the same quality that we celebrate in these movies that we're now making podcasts about and documentaries about,
Yeah,
Um, and it's inspiring to me that you've made, like your last In Search of Last Action Hero and Heroes and the Street Fighter 2 documentary. These are inspiring things because these are now the things I watch over and over again, right? In modern times. These are the things that if I was a kid, I'd pop this video cassette into the VCR and watch on repeat because I want to see those clips and I want to hear the stories from the people who in them. No Retreat, No Surrender is, again, I'll go back to Megaforce. It's one of those movies that if you know what it is, you either love it or hate it, but not everybody knows about it, right?
Well, yeah, isn't there a documentary coming out on Megaforce, right?
There is. I'm in it, actually. So,
Oh, you're in it.
yeah.
Nice.
Because the whole backstory is my co-host Dustin and I. He and I celebrate Megaforce. We have a line from Barry Bostwick: "The good guys always win, even in the '80s." That's our tagline for our show.
Right.
And we got Barry on the show, and then Barry's like, "Oh, I'm making this documentary," and next thing you know, we're like in the documentary. It's coming out later this
Sweet.
year. It's actually going to be, I believe, after the festival circuit, it'll probably be streaming on Amazon and more info on that to come. But it's a similar deal, not the same approach that you're taking with No Retreat, No Surrender, because the filmmaker for Megaforce, Bob Lindemeyer, that was his comfort movie. And that was his father figure replacement when he didn't have one as a kid. So he went to the movies, the cinema, to see Megaforce on repeat because it was like, oh, it's my dad on screen, the guy I idealized. And it's kind of like a buddy doc, which is it's a different approach. But No Retreat, No Surrender, like you were saying offline, and I would love it if you could go into it a little bit. J.W. Fales, who again was to me like a holy grail guest to get on the show to talk about his career. You got him, and you got him to talk about his backstory, right? Of how he all came to be.
Yes, well, currently, me and my co-editor Chris are sort of going through what we've shot already and started putting things into chapters, into sub-chapters. And today I was sort of going through the actors' backstories and putting them all together. Because, I mean, JW had movie roles after No Retreat. He wasn't like he disappeared, but
No.
I think things always just kind of tail off and how the industry changes and so forth. And it's the same with Kurt. Kurt had these opportunities to be an action star.
Right.
And that didn't really pan out because he didn't want to be an action star. He wanted to be an actor.
Yeah.
But so in the point of the documentary is to show you who these people were and how things kind of transpired throughout their lives. And trying to sort of make sure that the audience understand what's happened to these people. And how that sort of No Retreat was integral to some of them and to the fan base, because the key narrative of the film is that Jason, who idolizes Bruce Lee, he's beaten up and he's bullied, and he is trained by his idol to fight back. And there is that kind of thing that people saw and were inspired by because they were bullied as kids and wanted to fight back. And so there's who we've interviewed, even Scott Adkins, said he was beaten up on the bus and he went home and he had a Bruce Lee shrine as well. He wanted to be like Jason. So we should be releasing a promo as of recording this later today with that little nugget of story from Scott. And we've interviewed German fans who had the similar experience. A wonderful guy called Christoph who tells his story, and he had been, it was a really depressing story. I don't want to go too deep into it, but
it's okay. We have depressing stories on here.
He became, he used a movie as a sort of way to sort of, better himself, and he became obsessed with it. And so the sort of things I just completely skipped over when I was younger, because I saw No Retreat at a slightly older age, so I was less impressionable, perhaps.
Okay.
If I saw
Yeah.
it when I was 8 years old, then it would have been like, oh my God, this is the best thing since sliced bread. But I saw it when I was like 11 or 12, and, I'd already seen plenty of martial arts movies. I've seen Rock, and I'd seen where the sort of story was coming from, because you look at it and go, oh, it's a bit like Rocky, and, with this kind of, it was with the character starting low, then going high throughout, to become the hero at the end. But yeah, it was interesting actually because Bruce Lee's in it, we sort of do cover Bruce Lee as part of the history of Bruce Lee and the Bruceploitation stuff, because the producer of No Retreat, No Surrender had made Tower of Death, which was renamed to Game of Death 2,
Yep.
and a biopic on Bruce Lee called The Man, the Myth. So you kind of got that Bruceploitation stuff that then goes into essentially the development of No Retreat, No Surrender. And we obviously have the discussions of Western filmmaking versus Hong Kong filmmaking. So there is that, because you were saying earlier about how the film could be sort of seen as cheesy, and a bit, people do GIFs and all sorts of certain scenes, because you have a Hong Kong filmmakers with their sensibilities and use of comedy kind of mixed with Western filmmaking. So it's a little bit off kilter in places where you're like, oh, was that supposed to be funny? You kind of unintentionally laughing at it. But then there is comedy moments where you've got Kent Lipham, who's kind of being this kind of Belushi character, who's a bit like from Animal House, So you've got this, it kind of works in some ways, it kind of doesn't, but it doesn't in terms of like, it doesn't mean it's not funny. It's just like, tonally, it's a bit wacky and weird, and that's the Hong Kong style of filmmaking. And that's what I love about those movies of that period, especially with just the Jackie Chan films or Sammo Hung, because they're just mad and bonkers, and just it was just a revelation as a teenager when you're used to watching Van Damme action movies, and then you watch a Jackie Chan film like Operation Condor, or City Hunter. You're just like, whoa, like blown away how like the action is so bonkers and so daring, and the stunts are ludicrous. And you think, are they dead? It's like in Police Story where the bus just stops and those guys fly at the top of the bus and just whack right on the pavement. And
that Tango and Cash ripped off, by the way. Tango and Cash totally ripped that off.
Yeah, completely. That film's great though, still. But
it is still great. Yeah. But that was the moment when I kind of hated on Stallone for a while, because I'm like, he totally ripped that off. But,
Oh, of course. And I think even like, didn't Michael Bay rip off like Police Story with the cars going down the hill, smashing through that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they did it like decades earlier. You know what I mean? It's mad.
David, have you seen City Hunter? Jackie Chan's City Hunter?
No, I've seen very few Jackie Chan movies. That sounds like one that I should check out, though.
Well,
David,
I know
Oliver.
My crimes against cinema are endless.
Oliver, did you include the sequence in City Hunter where they become the Street Fighter characters in your documentary?
Of course, Zach. Of course.
Okay, so please go into that.
Oh yeah, because throughout the documentary we kind of talk about things like the spin-offs of Street Fighter, like also theatrical. We talk about the Street Fighter movie, of course, with Stevie D'Souza and Benny the Jet. We interviewed and who trained the actors, because Benny the Jet again is very important to No Retreat, No Surrender, because Dale Jacoby and Pete Cunningham were both trained by Benny later part of their lives. So he's integral to a lot of martial artists throughout the world, and Benny's probably like one of the best fighters ever, I think, really record wise, I think. But yeah, because some of the people we interviewed didn't like the movie, and some love it because it's kind of like good.
They didn't like No Retreat, No Surrender.
Sorry, they didn't like Street Fighter the movie because in terms of City Hunter, because City Hunter was, when you see the Street Fighter stuff within that, it's so like the video game.
Totally.
Where the film kind of was, it was missing all the special moves. And all the craziness, all the fireballs and sonic booms is not in the movie, but it's in City Hunter. So that was kind of like our little nod to Jackie and, the Chinese getting it right, but on a, shoestring budget comparison to, Stevie D'Souza's $35 million movie.
I mean, they sure did. And also on top that City Hunter, David, you should put on your top of your list of Jackie Chan movies to watch, because it is the epic fight scene that he has with Richard Norton at the end. I had talked to Richard about that, and just how many days that scene actually took to shoot and how brutal it was. It's an amazing fight scene. And then Gary Daniels.
Oh,
a story
Gary
that can be shared
is in,
offline, but Gary Daniels was a little cocky going into shooting that movie and got humbled. I'll leave it at that. He got humbled by the
oh,
locals.
I love Gary Daniels.
So do I. I love Gary.
He's in so much schlock, but he's such an amazing martial arts. He's like, before Scott Atkins, there was Gary Daniels. You know what I mean? Crazy like kicks and stuff.
Scott, do you think that Scott Adkins would, if he was in the, and this is no knock to him as an actor now, because I think he's amazing. I think he should be a bigger star than he actually is globally.
Definitely.
Do you think if he was in the 80s or 90s, he would have been a face that we'd see on movie theater posters?
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think
He's
so.
maybe slightly too late, I think,
Yeah.
for that wave, because I think he came about when the market was shifting.
Yeah.
So he kind of did a lot more straight to video kind of movies, which he's like top tier. He should have been boof, you know. But he's in John Wick 4, which is great because that's a successful movie. He's playing a guy in a fat suit, you know what I mean?
Right.
But he's still amazing. His performance is so good in that, and he's in his 50s now, I believe. So he can still do all the kicks and moves. He showed me a bit of a movie when I saw him, and it looked incredible. He's fighting this guy with this kind of iron fist. And
Oh,
it's just the most elaborate fight scene I've ever seen. I was like, I've got to see this movie.
cool.
So, yeah.
Well, it makes me wonder about, guys in their 50s. Well, no, seeing Kurt McKinney in The Last Kumite,
Yeah.
I thought he was fantastic in that.
Really? Yeah. Really great.
Really
Really
do.
good. When I was going through the rushes, and he was like outside of just the martial arts, he was getting his lines done in the first or second
Yeah.
take. He was so good. And I was like, man, it's a shame he didn't really, do more movies. He did Sworn to Justice with Cynthia when he kind of came back for that martial arts stuff in the mid 90s. Because Cynthia had this whole kind of change in her career. I remember I picked up as Impact magazine, a martial arts magazine. I had Van Damme on the front cover because he's from Street Fighter, right? But in it, I'm flicking through it, and it's Cynthia Rothrock, like topless, but all some bits covered up, of course. But it's all
Yes.
like to show this kind of new, somewhat sexualized image of her. And I was like, I can't complain. But it was like for Sworn to Justice, where they have like a sex scene and stuff,
Right.
But yeah, but obviously the film didn't, again, for Kurt, change his kind of trajectory of his career. He either kind of bowed out or did something else, and it was first weirdly actually when after I interviewed him. Literally a couple of weeks ago, I said to him, "Man, Kurt, you could have been Spider-Man in the 80s when Canon Films
Totally.
are going to do Spider-Man." And he said to me, "Oliver, how did you know that?" I went, "What?" And he goes, my agent said to me there was a casting call for him, so Canon Films Spider-Man, on hold though, so he was considered in the casting call to be Spider-Man.
Wow.
Yeah, couldn't believe it. I was
Wow.
like, man, Kurt McKinney, perfect Peter Parker. You know what I mean? At that period.
He would have been fantastic as Peter Parker.
And I said to him, in a mad alternative universe, he could have been
Right.
Spider-Man. And then they did the Spider-Man movie. You got Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, then you got like Kurt McKinney pulling the
McKinney.
thing off, and it's Spider-Man. It's
I
like,
mean,
oh,
when
that'd
I
be
was a
good.
kid, I don't know if you did that too, David, but when I was a kid, I would cast comic book characters, right?
Oh,
When the
yeah.
Punisher came out, I'm like, where's his skull? It's on his blade. Okay.
Oh,
But where's
yeah,
his skull?
yeah.
Like it should, but then I was thinking, oh, Mel Gibson would have been a perfect Wolverine. And like
Oh, yeah.
at the time when he was in Lethal Weapon, right? And just
Yeah.
I go there. But I gotta say this to you both because I don't want it to go unheard. And I also want to bring up Ken Lipham's bio on IMDb because it's worth reading if you guys have never tuned into this. But JW, you mentioned, Oliver, that JW had a career after No Retreat, No Surrender. He did a lot of television. And in fact, he was on a two-part episode of 21 Jump Street that we talked about on the show. It was I think Johnny Depp's last two episodes that he did on 21 Jump Street, where Johnny Depp is in a gang. And so, but JW shared that he was 25 at the time and he got cast as being a 13-year-old in who ODs on like PCP or something. But he's in a huge part of these two-part episodes called Loped Out. and it's Johnny Depp's swan song, I think, for he left after this was over. So, this is the one thing he said his mom wouldn't watch because there's a scene where he's in a casket dead, and he's like, my mom just would not watch that for me. But he talked a little bit about his relationship with Kent and how they were really good friends off screen,
Really?
And and then so Kent, who plays Scott in No Retreat, No Surrender, if you guys don't know, he is the John Candy villainous John Candy looking character, but his bio, which we read years ago on No Retreat episode, it's really interesting. His bio on IMDb says Kent Lipham was born to Jimmy and Nancy Lipham in 1961. He has a younger brother named Jamie. Around the age of 16, fearing he was becoming agoraphobic, his mother insisted Kent join a club. Not being very smart, athletic, or crafty, the drama club seemed perfect for him. The roar of the grease paint and the smell of the crowd thrilled Kent. Finally, he went to his mother and said, I'm going to be an actor and it's all your fault. After graduating from Talladega High School in 1980, Mom and Pop shipped Kent off to university where he studied communication arts, mostly theater. His favorite subjects were puppetry and ballet, almost said puberty, with modern jazz a close third. He received his BFA, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, encouraged by fans visiting his message boards on IMDb, he's recently decided to return to the business, which has never really left his system to begin with. He sadly passed away in 2008 at the age of 46. But he had a pretty decent filmography. He had quite a few roles he was in. David, you were not bullied by a guy who looked like Scott in No Retreat, No Surrender?
Nobody like standing across the street from me eating a cake with their bare hands, just like chomping at the bit to kick my ass.
It's a shame. It's a shame. So on our show, Oliver, we celebrate these movies we love, but we also kind of dig a little bit deeper into like what else was going on during this time in 1986 or the time that the movie came out. And this is martial art related. I wanted to share with you both that the video game Yi Kung Fu came out. Have you both played Yi Kung Fu?
No.
I played it.
You played
because
it?
I had to. Because it's the whole history of fighting games I had to cover in my Street Fighter 2 documentary. I was like, I'm going to play that game. I think I played it on a ZX Spectrum as a kid, but I had to play the arcade game again. Yeah, it was all right. It was fine.
It's fine. It's fine. There's one I believe it's just called Kung Fu or karate.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Kung Fu, you just walk along. Yeah, you walk along just kicking and whatever.
Yeah. David, do you know that game?
No,
you would
I
know
can
it if you
only
saw it.
remember two. There's one for the original Nintendo system that I played that was not quite close enough to the Bloodsport game for my liking. Like I wanted it to be exact. And then I think I played like Mortal Kombat on a computer. And that was sort of the end. Like I got to like throw somebody's head at them after that. But that was the end of my video game career.
Like I'm done and traumatized. Well, Kung Fu, I didn't know this, Oliver and David. I thought it was based on Game of Death, but apparently it's based on Meals on Wheels, the Jackie Chan movie. Yeah,
I knew it was Jackie Chan related, but I didn't know it was based on Meals on Wheels.
Which I would never expect.
No, you don't fight Benny the Jet in it, do you? At the end.
Which, bringing up Benny again, that's one of the greatest fight scenes that he's ever had on screen.
So good. So good.
So, you had mentioned the soundtrack in the beginning of this episode, Oliver, and Hold On to the Vision is sung by Kevin Chalfant, and I think people will know that Joe Satriani plays guitar on that song. And I'm sure maybe you're probably going to explore that in the documentary.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, because we've interviewed Frank Harris, the composer of the International Cut, which
cool.
So he goes into all of that, and we've interviewed Paul Gilreath, who would rescore it for the Western market, because New World Pictures have picked up the film for US market, and New World Pictures at the time were kind of in the business of either picking up movies that hadn't been finished, or they'd pick up films that released internationally and they'd rescore them for a US market. So Paul had come from composing music for Canon film trailers, and he had experience in all orchestrations, and they sort of, hey, look, I think he met a guy who he'd come into Canon Films who worked for New World Pictures and said, hey, look, we're doing this, would you want a job composing the score to this movie? So yeah, it's kind of his approach, and they both composers were completely unaware of each other's work. So
oh really,
you'll find out more in the documentary.
That's one of the things I'm most excited about when I saw both of those names, because it's been such a mystery to me over the years of like, because we got to get back to where Zach was going.
Oh yeah, no, it's all good. We'll come back to
here,
it.
and I don't want to spoil anything in the documentary, but I was so curious. So I think about like what happened like a year or two later with Bloodsport, where it got shelved. Like they filmed it and it sat for like a year or almost two. And one of the things that changed it was the Paul Herzog score. Kind of helped it like be a reality. And so I wondered if the rescoring was something to do with like maybe the US distributor found it unreleasable, or if it was a lot less, I don't know.
Well, Bloodsport was edited kind of by one editor who done it a very traditional way, and the fight scenes weren't well edited. So Jean-Claude begged and pleaded with Monarch and Golan to let him kind of re-edit the movie, and that kind of made it successful. And I think also the music played a huge part in that as well, because people, it's one of those great Stan Bush kind of scores of Paul Herzog, it's unforgettable. So, but yeah, editing was very key, and that made Van Damme, quite vital in the sort of having control of the editing of the fight scene. The same thing would happen with Cyborg, where Albert Pune had his own vision, and then didn't test very well, so Van Damme and Sheldon Lettich kind of went into it, I think, and sort of re-edited the movie, and that's where you got a lot of the what they call the double impact edits, where you see one kick becomes three, so I fucking love that. I put it once, I did it once in the Last Kumite, because I was told not to include too much of it. I was like, no, we need some double impacts, but
needs that.
Well, I wondered, that's kind of what I was curious. It was like, was this the first time Van Damme experienced the thing of like, oh, if you rescore a movie or you can get into the editing room? That's what I was kind of curious about, if that happened to No Retreat, No Surrender.
No, it was just basically like, it was cut down because New World Pictures wanted it a little bit shorter so they can squeeze in more runtime, squeeze in more showings in the day.
I wish they would do that more now.
It's really different, those two cuts.
Oh, definitely. It would be difficult to cut stuff down, for it to make sense.
I watched them both, and it was like there's 10-minute difference, and they feel totally different. I never saw like the ice cream, gag or all of that until the Kino release. It's like, I was kind of wondering, with you having edited The Last Kumite, if you were most familiar with the international cut or the US theatrical, because when I was watching it, it was almost like watching a work print. Like it's looser. It's got like temp music from other kung fu movies where the Frank Harris stuff is, in between I don't know. It's like, it's just these, sometimes it's big scenes, sometimes it's little trims, but it's a world of difference.
Yeah, it was, it does feel a bit more rough, the international cut of No Retreat, because NG, the producer, wanted a mono soundtrack. So when you listen to like the music, like especially the songs in the international cut, they sound really rough, like quality, especially during the end credits. And you see the end credits are slightly warped as well, so it's all a bit like rough and ready, right? So, but yeah, she was saying, David, like it felt different because it's scored differently as well. That can change a movie's tone, doesn't it? And the feel and flavor of it.
Oh, we say that all the time, yeah.
Yeah, and it's and you got different pop songs which both work. Paul's Gilriff's kind of contributions with that's his version of the song, and then you got Frank's version. I mean, they're both. Hey, it's always good to have two cuts, because growing up, like what's like Legend, Ridley Scott's movie. Oh, US cut short.
Perfect.
It's got Tangerine Dream score, and then you got international cut, which I grew up with, Jerry Goldsmith's score, and it's longer. So, but when the advent of DVD, they would start just releasing the US cut in Europe. I was like, no, where's the actual international cut, which we had?
Right.
That sort of disappears until they release some special edition where you've got both cuts. Yeah. But Yeah, that was a thing, but now I don't think that's a thing anymore. We're having different cuts of movies, apart from
Yeah.
maybe some of the endings or some of the political things being changed for China. You know,
True.
um,
Yeah. And then, of course, because every Zack Snyder movie comes out and doesn't do well now, and people go, "But wait till you see his cut. His cut's
oh,
amazing." And you're like, but that was his cut. No, 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 no. That's his cut. You got to see the cut. I'm like, okay, sure. That's a whole other story. Thank God for DVDs and Blu-rays now that have two different all the end credit scenes or whatever things that are just left on the cutting room floor. And I'm glad we have two versions of that. By the way, the Kino version of No Retreat, No Surrender, the Blu-ray, I think it went out of print. I'm not sure if Kino's
Oh.
going to release a 4K. They probably will. But at the current time, because I went to put links on the show notes for the JW and Kurt interview, it's not available. So if you've got a
well,
copy of it,
maybe another label will pick it up. You know,
I
in
hope so.
this year or next year. You know, if next year it's the anniversary, you might see another label pick it up. If it does get remastered or put on 4K, it does need a good clean up though, because the print is scuffed. It's like proper dusty and messy. Like I want it nice and clean.
I
Doesn't
totally
mean
agree.
doesn't mean scrubbing out the grain. I want the grain,
Yeah.
but it needs to be a little bit more polished, a little bit more clean.
Yeah,
And they
keep that
need to
green.
license the untold story of the making of No Retreat, No Surrender. Once that's a thing, that could be
Yeah, yeah,
an
yeah.
ultimate special feature.
Well, my
Top price.
wondering is that, next year is the 40th anniversary. I had mentioned to JW and Kurt that the New Beverly Cinema here in Los Angeles would be a great place to show the movie. Maybe there could be a double feature with the documentary and we can get, everybody to come out and do a little Q&A and blah, 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 blah. Hopefully that'll come out down the road.
Yeah, someone pays my flight, I'll be out there.
All right, we'll do it. We'll do it. Last thing I wanted to share really quick about Kevin Chalfant was that he was also in the band 707. And so 707 is the band that does the song Megaforce for Megaforce. So
Holy cow.
he's not
Okay.
only the voice of No Retreat, No Surrender, but also Megaforce. And both those songs are on my workout playlist. David, you're
Yes.
not in the minority when it comes to working out to 80s songs. Oliver, I don't know if you're familiar with the Blood Brother mixes that are out on like SoundCloud, Bandcamp. They're free. You can just go. But a guy, DJ A, he's awesome dude. He put together the greatest compilation of like not every song from the 80s and early 90s, but like all those anthem songs and Hold On to the Vision and No Retreat, like all those songs are on there and it's all mixed very nicely, right, David? It's like a nice
Yeah, with
power
dialogue
mix.
and stuff. I found
Oh,
out about that
wicked.
because of $2 late fee, and I maintain mine just like in a iTunes or whatever, like download the songs. And
Yeah.
another gift of $2 late fee for me was there's two, and both of these and have songs that I work out to. One is from the Wraith, and it's one of my favorites actually. I never saw that back in
Where's
the
the
day.
Fire?
Where's the fire? I will literally go repeat on that one
Yeah, it's
sometimes.
by Tim Feehan. Oliver, if you
Yeah.
want to jam, Where's the Fire is the
That's
jam.
good stuff. And the other one is from Youngblood, which I never even knew of that movie until you guys talked about it. We didn't cover it, but you just mentioned it a few
With
times.
Rob Lowe. Rob Lowe. Yeah,
Yeah.
we will cover that this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The end of the song there's I can't even think of the name of it, but it's the most recent one. Like I ripped it from the DVD or the Blu-ray, the Kino Blu-ray.
I think it's Mickey Thomas Stand Into the Fire. That's what
there it is. Yes. Yeah. All these fire songs. But anyway.
Oliver, if you want to see a really cheesy music video, the movie Youngblood, which is a hockey movie with Rob Lowe, Keanu Reeves, Patrick Swayze, Cynthia Gibb, there is a music video for the song Stand Into the Fire, which was the big song in the movie. And it's like Patrick Swayze wearing like clown makeup at one point, and
What?
it's really weird. But there's a really weird image of Patrick Swayze like doing a mime face or something. It's very weird. Worth the
my
price of
God.
admission.
I'm going to see that.
And
Beautiful time.
I don't know, Oliver. Yeah, what a time. So, Oliver, I'd love this. Has been awesome, by the way, having you and David on the show. I would love to do more of this if you're down in the future.
Definitely.
Okay, cool. Because we have another show called Tales from the Video Store where we celebrate just like video store days back in general. And maybe we get you on to do another one like this.
Oh man, I lived like 2 minutes away from the video store as a kid, so
Oh,
I've got
all
plenty
right.
of silly stories. So
Well, to be continued for sure. I'm going to put links to your Kickstarter for the Untold Story, No Retreat, No Surrender in our notes so everyone could go there. This will drop a few days before the campaign's over. So hopefully you're fully funded by the time people see this. But if not, just push it over the edge
Thank you
into
very
the
much.
universe. But thank you guys for being on the show. And this has been a lot of fun. So I don't know how to wrap it up. David, what would you say to wrap up No Retreat, No Surrender?
You got to go out with no retreat.
No surrender.
And the rest is history. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. And go support Oliver's films. Go out and buy Last Kumite and In Search of the Last Action Heroes and New Challenger on Vinegar Syndrome. All those links are in the notes. Go check it out. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.